Hey everyone. So I'm just going to do a little kind of walkthrough of this game. So I'll play it again real fast just so everybody can see how it looks in motion. So you drive around this little street sweeper and you're supposed to clean up the whole street within the time limit right here. So you've got 2 minutes to clean up everything. And you're blocked all the time by these parked cars who are illegally parked. So you can also use this um, parking enforcement guy to go around and ticket all these parked cars so that your street sweeper can actually clean the whole street. You also have pickups along the way under these little bushes that give you things like increased mustache size for a short time or increased speed. And then there's potholes like this guy right here, which are obstacles which will slow you down. However, your cop can also fix the potholes. So if he just goes over and hovers over the pothole for a little while, he'll actually be able to repair the road. And you can also collect these things along the way, and these trash on the floor, and eventually you just want to get it into the garbage dump over there. And we'll just speed up a little bit, get that in there. All right, lots of points, lots of gold. So that's basically how the game works. And so it becomes kind of a race and a puzzle to figure out what paths to put the two characters on in order to clean up the whole street in time. I got 30 seconds left, and there's no way I'll be able to clean all this. So I did it wrong, but that's how the game works. So I'll just switch over here in the 3D view so you guys can see how it looks in actuality. So you can see what I've actually done here is I have two different versions of this piece of geometry, one stacked right on top of the other. And if I turn this one off, you see there's a clean version of the whole same picture underneath. So all I'm doing actually is I've got this thing called a texture paint reference object, which is actually a script I downloaded off of the asset store called called texture paint, and it's an awesome script that just allows you to use this little brush here, or turn this thing into a brush, and you can paint color or alpha or anything like that into one image or into an image. So what I'm doing is just painting alpha into my um, dirty street to reveal my clean street underneath on a separate layer. And I have these barriers here that are just invisible cubes that are limiting my mouse, my little my little target that follows around my sweeper here. So if I just hit play here. So what's actually happening is as I move my mouse, as I click and drag, I'm actually moving this little target piece of geometry. And all it is just a cylinder with a texture of a target on it. And so every time I click on this and I can move it around, I'm drawing a new line off of that piece of geometry. And also that geometry will not allow me to intersect with any of these barriers. So that's how I'm keeping my character from driving anywhere but on the street. So that's pretty helpful. The geometry is the collider, so I don't have to worry about my mouse. My mouse can go all over the place. It can go over this geometry, and it's fine, but it'll just limit my my movement. So that's how I set that up. And then the cop is almost the exact same setup. It just doesn't have that same brush, obviously, because he doesn't need it. And whenever he crashes, he just runs a different set of instructions on these cars, for them to drive away. Now, how they're driving away right now is very primitive, as you can see. But if I just add more waypoints, then it should work fine. But they basically just there's a few waypoints all around the map. I've got these 6 here, and it's not really enough. So if I had more waypoints, then I could construct better paths. But basically, they all kind of look at the whole scene, and they find the other waypoints, and they measure the distance between each other, and they say, "Oh, you're closest to me, so you're a connecting waypoint." And then that's how they sort of determine what's the way out. And then I have this waypoint way at the end here. This is my exit waypoint. So once they determine who their neighbor is, they're like, okay, how do I get to the exit waypoint? Because I know that one. And they'll just do a simple calculation, like a subtraction, in order to get over there. Now the game just ended, and you can see here, hovering over my scene is my UI. And the reason it's so small in comparison to the scene, but it looks normal here, is because the UI is rendered from a separate camera, because I'm using NGUI, which is another great plugin from the Asset Store, which I would highly recommend everybody get, because it's awesome. I am not endorsed or sponsored by them either. But this this thing pops up here, right? And I can interact with this, but it's all interacting from a different camera, so I just gotta be mindful of that when I'm working. But that's kind of how that looks. So I'm just gonna pause again or stop again and start a fresh game, just so we can still look at stuff as we go. Now to construct the particles and the sort of system for my main sweeper guy, I'm just gonna click on him here in the outline here, and this is how he's sort of built. So he has a few different colliders on him. And again, I don't really work this way anymore with colliders like this because check spheres are a little bit more, I don't know, light. But this is how I was building this back then. And there's certain situations where colliders still work great. So don't not use colliders. But anyway, don't use, maybe don't need to use this many. So I just got a sprite on the floor for the shadow. You can see that move away as I think it should, yep, it's going to retain that offset, which is too bad. Oh, I just undid that. Then we got this sprite, which is just our main guy. And it's all under this giant top group. So I'm actually moving around the top group, and everything's coming along for the ride. So I can just throw anything in there, like these particles, which are just shooting off tons of little bubbles. And that's tucked on the ground, and it's just randomly moving or randomly shooting particles up towards the camera, and it kind of looks like that. It's pretty fun. And then I also have this other particle thing, which is just this sort of blue mist, this blue watery glow thing, and all that's doing is just shooting up some little blue sparkles. Looks kind of cool when he's moving around. So that's kind of all there is to that. And oh, that's cool. I didn't know I could do that. If you hit F while you're playing, it'll actually stay focused on the thing you hit F on. It's pretty neat. All right. Anyways, my time ran out again. So that's kind of how the sweeper's working, and this is the texture, the painting thing. So it's painting my image, painting away my alpha, revealing my plane behind it. Street Sweeper hit. Yeah, this is just a hitbox. So like it determines if there is a car driving and it hits this hitbox, then it stops moving. That's how that's working. And then I have another smaller one. I think it's just right on the top. Yeah, this smaller box collider, and this is determining if I've crashed into something. And you see that it is actually kind of smaller than my Street Sweeper itself, and that's just because if it's the same exact size as a Street Sweeper, it can tend to look visually like you didn't hit or like you just barely grazed it, and it'll still register as like a full crash. And it, the players are gonna get mad at that. They're gonna be like, "Yeah, this is lame. Like the collisions don't feel right." So if you just tuck it in a little bit, so that there's some overlap whenever they crash, then it feels a little bit more natural. It feels better, and it gives the player those abilities for those super narrow escapes, which is always fun. So that's that, and then so like things like potholes, for example, they just have a script on them that whenever they collide with the street sweeper, so if they collide with a sweeper, then there's a speed offset that goes to the sweeper of negative 0.6. And the parking cop also gets a speed offset, but he will also start a timer that will reduce the alpha of this pothole by a factor of time.delta time times 0.3. So a 30th of a second. So it takes like 3 seconds basically to destroy, 3.3 seconds something to wipe out this pothole. And once it is, the pothole is completely destroyed. It's a destroy game object. And then and then the cot doesn't have no longer has the speed offset, resets to 0. So that's kind of how that works. And of course, if you leave the pothole on trigger exit, then for the sweeper, which is the other game object tag, the offset resets to 0 as well. So that's how the potholes work, for example. Pretty straightforward. And we also have these obstacles. So these are just little things that you can collect along the way. And these obstacles, as soon as the sweeper moves into position of an obstacle with this very first smaller hitbox, so you can see there's 3 hitboxes total. There's this big outer one, this super tall skinnier one, and this shorter fat frumpier one. The fat one here is for the mustache itself. And anytime this collides with any of this street trash, the street trash becomes a child object of this sweeper mustache. So you'll see as I play and as I move around, you'll actually see these objects appear inside of the sweeper object. So there you go. So it just moves to become a child, and that way it sticks with the character. And it's also really important that your top group level of your sweeper, the scales are all reset to 1. And so when I first built this, I didn't know that I should have a top group that was empty. So I had a street sweeper, and I sort of rescaled it a bunch to make it look right, and it was 0.5 and 1.6 or something. I don't know. It was weird scaling. And as soon as I'd collect an object, it would snap to that 0.5, 1.5 scaling, and it'd be this long, stretched out, distorted object. And I was racking my brain to figure out what was going on. I searched the internet, finally found out that was the problem. So I was trying to offset it when it scaled, or when I connected it. I was like, oh, well, what if I just offset negative 0.5 and negative 1. No, you don't want to do that. That's just a giant cumbersome mess. Just make sure your top group guy is scaled at 1, and then everything will parent nicely, and it'll all look great. And it's very headache free. So that's how that works. Let's see. The cars. These guys have quite a bit of script on them. They are a little bit complicated, just because they have to be able to drive away and have a little bit of AI to them. So yeah, they do a bunch of stuff, and if they collide with the sweeper, then it instantiates the pow, that big pow, or the bang, or whatever it was. And then there's some waiting time, and then there's a wreck that goes back to the scene master, so your overall score goes down by 1. And if it hasn't driven away, then it starts to drive away. And if it hits a parking cop, then it gets ticketed, and it waits for 5 seconds, and then it starts to drive away. And then here's just some sort of update thing that's running constantly, that's waiting to find out if it's trying to drive away. And if it is, then it starts doing all this stuff. It starts following this certain path, and finds the waypoints, and eventually tries to leave. And it does a bunch of other stuff. Oh, it actually drops trash as well. So I had a little drop trash thing in here. So as it's driving away, it'll leave new trash on the floor. Typical passenger, typical jerk. Nah, not your just a typical jerk when you're dealing with a game about street sweeping. Let's put it that way. So that's the car. They're a little complicated, and I worked this game a long time ago, so I honestly don't really remember entirely what they do or what's going on in there, but the basic format of the game is from this thing called, let me see if I can actually find the thingy I'm looking for. Models, plugins. Vectrosity. So this, it creates my vector lines. And it's a script called Vectrosity, and it was written by Starscene Software, and it is incredibly amazing. And it's what I'm using to draw all these lines. And the line really is like the hero of the entire game. So this line is very easy to draw. It has its own waypoint system inside of it, and you can kind of see it here. In the, you can see a bend, a little nick, 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 all these little nicks. Each one of those is like a new segment, and each segment has an order, and it has a start number and an end number. So really simple, and it has a a 3D location, a 3D position in the scene. So I'm using this to position these waypoints, and then all I'm doing with this sweeper and the parking cop as well is I'm just moving the position. I'm lerping my position from one waypoint to the next waypoint to the next waypoint because I have a 3D coordinate location of that waypoint. And every time I get to a new waypoint, I look for the next waypoint and go there. And that's why this guy will just continually follow forever and ever and ever. And I have a set speed that he'll follow at, and then I can alter that speed as he goes with these boosts or with these speed offset ability thing, potholes and stuff. So that's really how the entire game is built. And there's these the parked cars do the same thing. They waypoints created, and then they just follow the waypoints, and that's pretty much it. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah, so that's kind of the game. That's how it works. And I'll be putting up as much as I can of this. It's an older project, so it's kind of missing a bunch of stuff. But let me see if I can get it up for you guys, and you guys can play with it and learn from it too. So anyway, have fun. Thanks very much. Bye. Bye.